we will be working with. Okay, so we can see this is the public IP address of the front-end EC2 instance. So let's go here and let's now try to see if it is working. Okay, so it works. So this is our front-end application. So we can see that there will be two tabs. This is one the database where it shows all the tables of the user created, and this is where the all the dynamically generated APIs will be shown. So to demonstrate, let's first create a new table. Maybe let's try to add a table called students. We'll add a new column called name. It can be of these three types. For now, my application has only these three types called varchar, and let's say roll number, which is of type int. So we can also remove and add a new column, roll number, and again. So these are all possible. So when I click on the submit button, this new table will be created in our database and with these columns, name and roll number. And then an email will be sent with the JWT token to the email address provided. And then the URLs which can be used to add, insert, or delete the information to this table will also be generated. Let's see how it done. When we click on submit, we can see an empty table here because there's no information, and we can see that there should be a new mail sent to the subscribed email that case student is, and this is the JWT token. So JWT token, this is just the extra security layer which we added to make our APIs more secure. So if you want to see the APIs, just click on here and you can see that a new student's accordion was shown, and it will have all the APIs which you need to interact with this database. So let's say post. Now suppose you want to add a new value to the database, we can just click on the copy. So this got pasted on our clipboard. Now let's go to Postman and now let's try to create another post here. Post. So we copied here. So it of course needs a authorization token, which we will send it here as authorization, and then we will paste the uh, this is the JWT token which we got as an email, and to send the information, let's say JSON, and we'll send it here. Name, say Saf, and to add a roll number, we'll let's say roll number 1. So let's say send. Okay, so this it says success yes. So and if we go back and see, we'll see the our new data was added to the database. Now let's try to delete the column just to show that we can do anything. Let's copy this, go to database, and we need this ID also. And now let's go to a new column. We'll now try to delete it. This is the same URL which we copied from here, and it shows that it needs an ID. So we'll add it here, Control V. This is the ID which we copied from the database displayed. And when we click on it, send, it says invalid token because we did not add the token here yet. So let's say authorization, and let's now try to add the token. This is the same token which we got it from there, from the email. Now if we do, yep, now it works. So if we come here and then see, now you don't see that column. And similarly, you can add any number of tables and any number of times to make it work. Now let's try to understand how this application is actually working. So when I create this new table and add the value and click on submit, it first goes to my Node.js server, which is installed, which is deployed on my EC2 instance. Let's go to code. This is the um, this is the backend code which we have. So when I use the date, I am using the MySQL module of the npm and to connect to database. And then when you click on this, this is the route which will come here. We can see this is the generate DB route, and it comes here with the information which comes. So first it will create a new user table. So this create table with the database name which I got, and then this database created. So if we come to our database, you will see here a new table. Like we created students, we create a new table created. So students is this table name, and this one is the user ID. Now we already have this user stored here. So this user ID is the one which we created. Now, if we come back, we see that empty here columns here. So now let's go. Now let's uh, s- and the second thing is, how did we generate this URL? So to generate the URLs, I am taking this API gateway URL. API gateway URL, I get it from the secrets manager. So if you see here, this is the database. This is the secret key here. And if we go to the secret manager in the instance, we can see it will already have stored because we made it from the cloud formation. We can see here retrieve secret value. So we can see that we have this API gateway URL here already. So using this URL, generate API. So we'll take this gateway URL, we'll attach it to user ID and table name. So user ID and table name, this is the most important information which we need. So for every table, we create first get this generate endpoint, we get post, we then generate endpoint, we put delete put, and we generate endpoint, and same for delete. Now this information will be displayed on here. And the another interesting thing is, when the user copies that email, what happens? How are we exactly executing the queries? So when the user executes, try to reach this endpoint URL, what happens is, we can go to the architecture. So what happens is it will first go to the API gateway. Here we have a proxy created. The proxy will send all the URL information like user ID, which is in this case one, and the database table name, which will be sent to me. Like now let's go to our Lambda code. Here we have this function API endpoint. This is the Lambda function which we have. So this is where we get all the information. So this Lambda function directly gets triggered when you trigger the API gateway URL. So now suppose we do an endpoint here. If suppose we did post here, this is the API gateway URL, and this information will be appended with it. So one and student. One is the user ID, and students is the table name. The students, the table which got generated here. So when we get the head through the headers, we first get authorization token, and using the JWT token module of Node.js, I verify it. And if it is an invalid token, then I just throw an error. Otherwise, it comes here. First, it gets the information. First, we get the method, which is post, get, put, and delete. And then I get the path. From the path, I can get the information. Now, suppose if you see the path has this information, one and student. So I just wrote a JavaScript code. Now suppose get username and path. So I split the string and get the information name. So I get the user ID table, and in the case of put, I also get the record ID. And I take all this information to generate the queries for it. So now if it is a post, then we go to this post API handler, and I try to write this generalized query which will work for any kind of table. So I will get the table, and then this will generate and insert with this table name with the request data, whatever was there in the body. And then I try to see these are the few error handlings I need to do. And then it joins all the tables. So it dynamically generates the query for inserting into whatever the table name was provided. And then it just executes the query here. And this is how the dynamic API works. So I just generate a URL based upon the information which I need. And when I get the information through the API gateway URL proxy, I just wrote some generalized queries which would work for any kind of table and any kind of data I get. So it's all about writing the generalized queries and able to execute it and getting the information. So similarly, now suppose for the put, I wrote another update query. So here I get the table information same. I get the URL of the API gateway, and from the API gateway, I use the string manipulation to get that information. And also get the record ID and then I execute. Similarly for delete, I get the table name and I get the ID and I just execute the token. So this is the Lambda function, and its whole function is it gets the URL, it gets the information from the URL which it needs to execute the queries, and then it generates a generalized query and then executes them. So it looks like an API was dynamically generated, but there is no code to get the REST endpoints. It's a generalized string for specific table and names, and then executing the APIs. So this is how everything is working for our application. And this is the overall architecture which we have. So the table was created using front end and using the backend here. And an SNS topic was used to send the token. And this all tables are stored here. And when the APIs are showed to the use user executes it with the Postman, or in this case, you can use a front-end application. It goes to our proxy, and using proxy, it goes to Lambda. Lambda now has all the information it needs to create a generalized query, and it will connect to your database and then executes the query and sends the required information to the user. So this is how our application is working.